Okay.
Right.
So this is what our presentation is going to be about, integrating therapy into tabletop role play and the impact of research on innovation and therapeutic interventions. We're going to do a slide each, so we'll just pass between ourselves as we go, and we'll start with Sharlene.
So, thank you. So throughout the presentation, this is what we're going to be covering. So starting off with our journey into TTRPG, what we're doing with regarding to looking at bridging the gap between therapy and therapeutic, and how that's led on to us doing our research, and from there it being a launch pad for future research, and I'm going to conclude.
So this slide, it looks more academic than it is, to be fair. So it's pretty much a slide just to give you a bit of background into Sharlene and myself and how we got started on this journey. So we literally this time last year knew absolutely nothing about Dungeons and Dragons or anything to do with tabletop role play for that matter. We actually came across it at a Comic-Con, which I made Sharlene come along to because I wanted to meet a Vampire Diaries cast member. So completely organic, and we ended up networking with a few people there, and as Ian will tell you, we'll talk to anyone. And we ended up speaking to some publishers that was they were writing their own stories. So they were using the mechanics of tabletop role play, but they wasn't focusing solely on Dungeons and Dragons, which we found so interesting, how they was using the game from different angles. And we completely came into it with the mindset of a therapist. So we were like, this sounds so cool. How can we incorporate this into our practice? Because we're just seeing so much value with it, and how much what they was doing, the core principles of what they were doing, aligned with person-centered therapy. Well, humanistic, to be fair, because I wouldn't just go solely for the person-centered approach. It's a congregation of all of it, and how we wanted to do that, and how we became so involved with it and so invested. So we came back and we did a mini campaign. We had a dungeon master came in and run a couple of sessions for us. We endorsed the characters, and we had a bit of character anxiety at first of the whole, can we do accents? Can we do this? And yeah, so we've kind of got over that. But we just loved it. We loved playing it, and we loved everything about it. And we just recognized, the more we played it, the more we recognized its potential as a therapeutic intervention. And that's when we started to do our research and looking at papers. But we did notice quite a lot of gaps in the research, and that a lot of it isn't UK based.
So after the event and fueled by enthusiasm, we thought that surely this should be, it is being used as therapy. And although we found substantive research attesting to the therapeutic benefits, a lot of has been discussed today, particularly D&D, there was little out there to suggest that it's being used as a tool in therapy or as a therapy itself. However, the research that did exist gave weight to ideas, but again, there wasn't a lot of it, and it's predominantly USA based. So we recognise the importance of creating an evidence base even in the UK. And our driving aim and what's motivated our research is to facilitate a holistic approach. So combining elements of narrative and drama therapies along with play therapy, to basically create a contained environment for clients to be able to externalize the struggles in the gameplay, where it's a fun and engaging environment. It can provide the opportunity for them to potentially confront and manage and overcome those struggles. And I know this has been discussed already today in terms of sort of different systems. But what we're looking at is taking it that step further. So as the sort of the normal therapy process is to conduct assessments with clients to ascertain what their struggles are, what their goals are, if any at all, and tailor a narrative and to a gameplay to address those. So it's at the moment we're sort of technically using the mechanics of D&D because that's all we know at this moment in time, because we are pretty new to it still, rather than using a preset system. So, and although the TTRPG and D&D group environment does facilitate that therapeutic containment, we're thinking of the next step. So after all these thoughts on sort of the journey back, but we got back to university and we did meet a few roadblocks. And so when Orla and Harry were talking earlier about sort of from a sort of PhD perspective and getting, being met with, I don't know, I bet just, that it's not as academic. So we approached our lecturers because we're third year counselling and psychotherapy students. And not only was lots of faces pulled about what we were thinking of doing, it was like, no, you can't do undergraduate research. But where there's a will, there's a way. And Alex Barker, who's one of our supervisors, along with Ian, introduced us to the undergraduate research scholarship scheme, which enabled us as undergraduates to be able to run a research project. And so that's what we did.
So we designed a pilot study, which we didn't really know which angle to go with and what we was going to actually focus on. But because I don't know if I said it actually on the other slides, Charlene and I are psychology students. No, we're not. We're psychotherapy students, psychotherapy and counselling students, and we're currently on placement. But our placement, we're in a college, and a lot of our clients, it's quite prominent that a lot of them have social anxiety. So we went with that to see how we could use tabletop role play with the elements of person-centered counselling to look at alleviating social anxiety, which is great because we'll be starting to run that in the near future at the college. But yeah, back to the research. So as tabletop role play newcomers, one of the first things that we recognise is that the D&D rules are really complex, and there's a lot of them, and they can be quite overwhelming actually to get your head around. So we, particularly looking at it from a therapy angle, we reduced a lot of the rules and written our own story and went with it that way. We had a mixed demographic of participants, and we pre-designed the character sheets. At the time, for the research purposes, I think the pre-designed character sheets was our only option for time, because we didn't want to spend a lot of time, and we didn't know how we would get the participants to come along and have so many sessions, and we did run everything as a one shot. So yeah, we pre-designed them and we gave them all out randomly, which was actually turned out to be really interesting in the analysis. So yeah, as I said, the research was conducted over 4 one-shot focus groups. And we worked closely with a dungeon master who came in and facilitated all the games, ran the story for us, and Charlie and I took an observational stance, and which was really good because we got to observe what was going on around the table without having to focus on running the game, but it also allowed for us to help facilitate with the participants, because we did have sometimes, because we was dealing with social anxiety, and there was sometimes when one of us had to sort of help the participants with that. Straight after the game, as soon as it was concluded, Charlene and I and the DM left the room, and one of our supervisors, which was Alex or Ian, came in and did a semi-structured interview with the focus group, which is what we've done our analysis on. This method, we thought, would aim to reduce bias and try to get some honest feedback, really. So that was the main purpose of it. And to our knowledge, we've not seen a study where they've actually done the focus group questions straight after the game has taken place. So that was another reason why we went with it. Analysis purpose, well, I have got some themes, but we are currently in the middle of still writing that up, because as Charlene said, it's for the URSS. So we're doing this presentation and that presentation. So the 3 overarching themes that we've got at the minute is the immersive experience, the connectiveness, and the interplay of the characteristics. So the first one, the immersive experience, we looked at that because it sort of gives a description of how the players become fully absorbed in the story and their character. And we seen, even in the short time that we actually played the games for, because as I said, it was a one shot that lasted around 1.5 hours each game, but we're still seeing the connections that were built with their own characters and with each other's. But it was really interesting to see how they can, even though they've built them connections, they were still quite satisfied from the game, and it was still an enriching experience, which was part of what we're going to allude more into when we do our full research right up, because we're hoping to publish that anyway. The secondness was the connectedness, referring to how social bonds were built. And as I said, it was social anxiety. So there was one session where we had two participants who, they diagnosed, well, they didn't diagnose. They told us that they both had social anxiety, but one of them at the beginning of the game, they didn't know that about each other, but one of them at the beginning of the game became really anxious, and Sharlene had to go off and make sure that she was still okay to continue going forward, which she decided she was. But it was really interesting because someone who she had never met before was sat next to her, and he kind of threw her like this virtual arm around her and guided her all the way through the game. And the connection that was built up from two complete strangers, just because they'd recognized that relatability of anxiety between them, and it was so successful at the end. And the feedback that we got from that within the interview questions at the end, it was amazing to see how she took that turnaround and came back into the game and felt really supported. So if that was done over a longitudinal study, I think the results from that would be really impressive, to be honest. And then lastly, the interplay of the characteristics, which is kind of how the participants embrace the fictional role, but it was very notable that even though they wanted to endorse playing somebody else, they still brought elements of themselves into the character. So that is something that we want to look at in further research, which Sharlene will elaborate on a little bit later on in the presentation. But in altogether, we just found that even though we did these short sessions, that as a therapy or a therapeutic intervention for things like social anxiety and social bonds and things like that, it was really impressive as to the results that we did find. So so we've had some really good results, and we're looking forward to writing them up, and hopefully you guys will get to read them soon.
So we entered this research with the understanding that our results may be limited because obviously it's a really small sample size. The sessions were only one shot. We were really limited with the time scale that we had because we literally ran it over the summer. So our initial plan was to scale it, to take the same model and do it over a longitudinal study. However, from actually running the research, it came up that we basically needed to focus on sort of key aspects such as the demographics, the severity of the anxiety, and the experience of the participants, because we had some that were friends, some that were strangers, some that had played before, some that had never played before, and sort of different levels of anxiety. So, but that is a thought, because we have an option for how to do that. So what it's also brought up is other basically looking at other opportunities as well. So one of the themes that's come out of the research was the importance of the DM. So basically how the role of DM facilitates, because of them allowing creative exploration, how that solidifies the bonds amongst the group. But also looking at the DM sort of creating that comfortable and contained environment, and how that correlates with the therapeutic relationship, because the therapeutic relationship is the foundation to therapeutic growth, and that facilitation by the DM and how that mirrors that therapeutic relationship. So that could be something that I'd like to look into. Also, emotional permeability, which is the technical term for the bleeding and bleed out of the movement of emotions of both like player to the character to the player, and how the individual's emotions transcend even gameplay to real life and vice versa. So those are just some of the research projects that we'd like to look at, because we're both going on to do MRes and hopefully PhD after that. But something else that's come out of us doing this research is that we're actually running the story. So the story that we've run in the research project, we're running it as DMs, which is like a whole other anxiety. Running it at a Sensible in Derby. So we've got a group of 4 12 to 13-year-old boys, all with different additional needs. And we've stripped back the design of the character and the background sheets and created a super simple version. We're 4 sessions in, so we are 5th this week, and we've had incredible feedback, which I'll share in a second with you. We've also been asked to run the story event at a further educational college with a group of 16 to 18-year-old students, which we're starting after October half term. And the college is where we're at placement as well, but they're really keen for us to run the longitudinal study there, which is sort of going back to our original plan. But also the school are really keen for us to do research there as well. So we've got options already. So just to share the testimonials with you, there's also another child that I want to talk about, Draconis, and his behaviour. So he's a year 8 student, so around sort of 13ish, and his behaviour a year ago, he wouldn't have been able to sit in that room at all. But what we've had from feedback is, one, it's the first time that the teachers have seen him be able to sit and engage in anything for any length of time. His is a prolific swearer. And again, this is the first time he's been in an environment where he's not swore at all. If at one point he stopped himself. But there was actually a moment last week where he was on edge. I mean, he's a very, very chaotic individual at the best times, but he was really on edge and he just wanted to blow stuff up. So that was facilitated. I mean, he was in a contained environment and a confined environment, and he wanted to throw magic missiles, which, it did. But we found out afterwards that he's been experiencing change within school, and which had reflected in his behaviour in the room. And I think knowing that, we probably would have managed it differently and maybe made it go a little bit wrong, and sort of made it more of a experience for him. And I think this is where, sort of going back to looking at it from a therapy, is having that assessment of what's being brought into that space. So in addition to that, we've now got a huge waiting list of kids who now want to do it. So we're in demand. So that's what our future plans are at the moment, to run more groups.
So I apologise for our presentation not being quite as long as all the others, but we're happy to answer any questions. But
no,
I'm really sorry.
There's something playing in the background in another room where we are. So I hope you can still hear us. But in regards to our journey, so it's been a complete whirlwind. We've gone from knowing very little to tabletop role play, to writing our own story, and to conducting the research. And our main goal now is to create a social impact. So I don't know how many people on this call are actually at our university, but we've aligned with a business within the university which is called Enactus. And because we did the URSS, we've actually looked at the Civic Hub, which is about creating social impact. So we're running so at the end of the slide, you'll see we've got to put our website on there, and we've set it up, and we've called it Role Resolve Psychotherapy. So we're running it as a project throughout the university now, and trying to get other students involved so we can, as Sharlene said, we are in demand. We've got a really big waiting list at the school that we're in, and other settings that are wanting us to go there. So now we've got a goal in mind, is to bring more students into the project, to get them out into the schools, to come with us. Maybe we'll break off and take some out with us, and trying to get other people involved, because the bigger impact that we can make and raise more awareness in this. And it's been really interesting, because as we've shared this along the way, when we've been talking to people, and we've been met, as you said at the beginning, with the other people who had spoken and said it's not the traditional PhD, and it's not as academic as some things, but yet other people that do understand D&D, they just instantly see. So as students who play D&D for fun, and they may be studying an educational degree, they are we want to be involved, we want to come out there, we want to do this, we want to come and help write stories. So we've implemented that into what we're doing now, which is just seeing such a huge, I don't know, there's so many people that are invested in it, which has been great for us, because at least someone's taking us seriously. But yeah, I've just clicked the screen by accident. But what I was going to say was, and in respect to that, the future research for us is to just build our knowledge up on the game, and to just improve with that, and hopefully just make a difference and incorporate it into our practice when we do graduate next summer. So these are some of the references that we have used. And
That's it.
yeah, if you've got any questions, then we will be happy to try and help.